this would be an example of, just like deliberate thumbing of the eye, refugees that are allowed in the United States and are allowed to skip the line versus others. And they couldn't make it more obvious.
The white genocide that's happening in South Africa.
Hey, let's at least give them the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Wondering where all these South Africans are going to go? Don't worry. They already had a plan in place. And it was called Acre Trader. That's right. They already took the farmland from farmers who were failing. As a matter of fact, they have about 40,000 acres of farmland that they took from American farmers because they wouldn't give them subsidies. Acre Trader is an American real estate investment company that specializes in farmland. It says here that the company aims to increase investor access to real estate assets and provides capitals to farmers and growers to expand their business.
So one thing I should
sent you this.
Yes, I know. And one thing I should mention yes, Jen, sometimes you send things that are worth putting up on the podcast.
No, but I don't always remember what I send you.
Well, that's all.
And also, by the way, I didn't understand it, which is why I was sending it to you, because you're the real estate person.
I'm in commercial real estate, and one thing that I try to make very clear to people is that I believe in the free market, but not this. This ain't a free market. Are you crazy? This is a market that is completely monopolized, concentrated into the hands of a few. And when it comes to any type of major corporation, a great example of that would be Ben & Jerry's ice cream. We've had Ben Cohen on the podcast. He and Jerry decided to sell their interest to a company called Unilever. Well, it turns out that Unilever, which is a multinational corporation, invests in the state of Israel, full stop. And so while Ben Cohen is trying to reacquire Ben & Jerry's, it is very important to note, why is it that Unilever conducts business the way that it does? Because it is a publicly traded company and it adheres to the will of their shareholders.
It has to. That's by law. They're legally bound to do that. That's the problem. Hence capitalism.
And that is the broken side of the system that has completely engulfed any semblance of competition, opportunity to succeed in the free market. That doesn't exist. And when everybody says that you can have this because we just need to get rid of the waste, I tell people, you cannot have a successful free market of capitalism without socialism. There is no way that it can work otherwise. And so when we look at circumstances like this, where the government has been completely bought off by corporate special interests like Acre Trader, the idea that you have farmers in this country who are not able to make ends meet because all of their subsidies are being taken away. They are providing a service. They're providing food, land, irrigation, everything. There is so much value to what farming is supposed to be. We ask ourselves, why does Bill Gates own 250,000 acres of farmland? Where is the logic behind that other than monopolization of the food supply?
Well,
which is what he's doing. And so Acre Trader, I'm not saying they have any affiliation with Bill Gates. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But what they do have is a direct line to the multinational corporations that want to monopolize our food supply and our water supply. And the reason they're able to get away with this is because we do not have a government that answers to the will of the people in any way. So it's just like I said, when people say, oh, how could you say revolution? This is why. Because there is no way out of this.
So are you saying that this is the land that they're earmarking for those horrid, those South African refugees fleeing persecution? This is the land that they're allocating to them?
The problem that people need to understand, and that's not to say that institutional racism does not exist. It most certainly does. But institutional racism is being used as a shield, as a mask for what this is all about. The reason that these South African refugees are being brought here is because this is all economics. This is all about facilitating the interests of corporate power.
Does she explain how it works?
Well, let's continue, and she's going to share more insight.
But what they failed to leave out here is that the first investor into Acre Trader was none other than JD Vance. You know, JD Vance, the one who's in charge of the White House with the president who is cutting all the subsidies to the farmers? Yeah, that JD Vance. And what they also failed to mention is the fact that the people who were investing, yeah, they were South Africaners. And guess who just came to America to go on these farms? That's right. You guessed it. Are you sick of it yet? Are you sick of it yet? $880 billion being pulled from Medicaid so they can fund tax money going to the rich. Your farmland being taken away from American farmers and being given to South African refugees. People being human trafficked all over the United States.
I just want to say, you know what, though? Good that it's happening here. That's what the Palestinians have to deal with. They have to deal with some colonizer coming and taking their land and kicking them out of their homes. So it's like, you don't get to do that all around the world and not have that shit happen at home. And people need to see this shit happening. Yeah, because the farmers have been screwed in this country since the 70s. I mean, it goes back probably even further than that. But like that's when big ag really dug in and everybody got screwed. And so I told you this about those South African refugees. I said, I don't know why this is connected to Elon Musk. I told you that. I couldn't quite figure that out, but there's no way that his South African ass is not involved in this.
Perhaps.
Okay. Sorry.
We'll finish it up.
States and outside of this country for financial gain. Minimum wage is $7.25. Hasn't been raised since 2009. You can't afford health care. You can't afford your car insurance. You're probably not going to be able to buy a home anytime soon. And grocery prices are through the roof. And guess who's going to own your food now? The People's Sick Day is coming. It's going to be a 1 to 3 day collection of people who are going to take back their power by setting down. No more showing up for work when you're making peanuts and they're giving away your farmland to foreigners. You better join us, because unless we stand up, none of us are going to win this fight.
So great, we're colonizing our own people. That's just fucking great. Like, it's yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm living in the Hunger Games. If Stanley Tucci were to appear as Caesar Flickerman with the bad pair of veneers and start emceeing this shit, it would be very believable to me.
Well, how far away from the Hunger Games are we, Jay? I mean, I know that they say that it was only a half-hearted joke, but this idea that they're trying to create a reality TV show for people to compete for for immigrants to compete for U.S. citizenship.
Somebody said that as a joke?
They said it was a joke and they say it's not legit, but I'm thinking, well, you're just putting an idea in people's heads. And considering this is Trump mania that we're living through right now, who's to say that that's not going to happen?
Well, everything's a reality show to them.
Yeah. And I still haven't seen Idiocracy, and Lord knows I should see that movie.
Yeah. I mean, to add to Jen's point, fascism is imperialism turned inward. And so now, happy birthday to Malcolm X. Today would have been his 100th birthday.
Yep.
This is when he says chickens are coming home to roost.
For sure.
And, yeah. And so now you have South Africans, white South Africans, that are coming here to take over land that didn't belong to them, that was stripped from a lot of farmers. And I got to say, this is, Black farmers are the canary in the coal mine, because that started with them, right? They started stripping the land away. And so now it's happening to white farmers too. And so now it's going towards these foreigners who aren't refugees at all. I mean, according to the South African president, they do not meet the conditions of being refugees. And in fact, white South Africans are only 7% of the population in South Africa, yet they own over 80% of the farmable land in South Africa. So when it comes to institutional power, they absolutely do. And so really, I'm going to call a thing a thing. These are just a bunch of special little snowflakes that couldn't make it in South Africa, and they come here to try to strip the land up from the people. And so it's like, y'all couldn't cut it in South Africa, so now you guys try to come here and cut it here. But the funny part is, one thing I heard is that they're going to be putting some of these South Africans in neighborhoods, and in neighborhoods where the population is predominantly Black American. And we got to say this. I'm going to say this right now. We are not like our South African brethren. Go ahead. Put them up in Baltimore.
I was just going to say, good luck with that.
Put them in Chicago. Right? Put them in Detroit. Go ahead and do it. But I'm going to tell you right now, you say one wrong thing, I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm going to say it just like the Gen Z says, you're going to catch a fade real quick. Real quick.
Yeah.
So they better mind their P's and Q's and just like, because I'm telling you right now, it's not going to fare well for them at all.
No.
Jen, I think this would be,
I love the find out portion. I'm always a big fan of the find out portion of the games. You know,
Jen, can you share? Jen, can you share with Jay, because I think it's appropriate to bring up the story from, Mo and A1 in
what
Hollywood.
happened with our community garden?
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's very relevant to
it is. I mean, it's just it's part of the gentrification problem, but essentially, friends of mine who are community workers, very much a la, mutual aid and really taking care in the community over here. Mm-hmm. One of them grew up in that community. He's like, the godfather of Liberia, basically. But we had created this community garden, and it was going really well.
Nice.
It was really nice. And people from that community were bringing their kids over, and it was starting to really take off. Then some Israeli buys this house next door, and I called her Israeli Karen. She would come over and start like nosing around what's going on in the garden, and can you move this, and we don't want that, and and all of this stuff. And I remember pulling her aside at one point and saying to her, you and I are kind of guests in this neighborhood, right? Like, this isn't our neighborhood. I'm here helping my friends with their garden, but you kind of, I basically told her she needs to know her place politely. And she never got it. And over enough time, and I actually believe that she's the reason that they lost their garden, because at the end of the day, she probably called her husband and had him buy it out from under them, because it was given to them by someone who was basically donated it because he didn't really need the money, but somebody made him a really good offer. And I have no doubt that it trails back to Israeli Karen.
Yeah, no, dude, this woman literally rolled up into the hood in her white Mercedes.
It was gross, but when she walks over and she says to Aaron, he's our friend, and he is he's very streets. I mean, he is. That's just who he is. And she walks up to him and starts, and he looks at me and he's like, "Can you talk to her?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll deal with her." I was like sort of put on white lady duty, I guess, but like it was. She was so out of her element, but I could tell that she was just so put off by the fact that there's all these Black people here, in the neighborhood that you bought, but no one probably told her that, and they're trying to gentrify the neighborhood. So it was just one nightmare after the other once they bought that property next door, and they ended up losing the garden.
And that's where having strong community ties is essential, where people need to be working together, because if the community was working together, you would have been able to run Karen or Zarin in this case. I think that's a good one, a Zionist Karen. So you got the Zarin out of town. I'm telling you, dude, I wanted to take her head off. And
it was annoying. It was annoying. And at the end, but here's the thing, everything happens for a reason. I do believe that. And that area, it's kind of like, it's so used to being abused at this point that there's just, I don't know that they'll ever find a way out of it other than being completely gerrymandered or gentrified and taken over. I don't know what's going to happen over there. They build all these apartments that no one there can afford to live in. They call it subsidized housing, but there's like 3,000 applicants for every one spot, and it's not even that inexpensive. Like just all that, you know what I'm talking. Like, don't you? It's everywhere. This is everywhere.